Hello everybody, g'day, kia ora, buenos dias, konnichiwa. My name's Glenn and here is my review of Rugby's global calendar, looking at the club game in Southern Hemisphere and Asia. First of all, Super Rugby, the biggest and most important tournament for the Southern Hemisphere. The recent format of 3 conferences of 5 teams would have changed anyway with Sunwolves' exit, though in 2020, after COVID stopped everything in March, New Zealand was the first to restart, with a 5-team double round-robin in June-July, before Australia followed shortly after, replacing the Sunwolves with the force from Global Rapid Rugby, in a similar format adding a playoff and final, while South Africa could finally join the party in November with their 7-team Unlocked tournament. New Zealand announced quite early their intention to repeat the 5-team comp in 2021, adding semis and a final, to the dismay of the potential Pacifica partners looking to enter their teams, while Australia recently confirmed to do the same, which is a shame as they missed the chance to pull in a team like Fiji Latui, also from Global Rapid Rugby. To date, South Africa has yet to confirm plans for February to May, critical preparation time before the Lions tour, assuming it goes ahead, other than an SA Cup to be formalised in due course, while they debate and negotiate whether to join a new Pro 16 and play over their 21-22 summer, or perhaps figure out their own Super Rugby South Africa comp, which might include either or neither of Jaguares or a third time lucky for an Eastern Cape team. Super Rugby, Aotearoa and AU will play double round robins from February to May, and New Zealand Rugby and Rugby Australia announced last Friday an additional 5-week Trans-Tasman comp between their 10 sides in May-June, though how long-term that is uncertain. Considering a Pro 16 expansion, nothing's decided yet, though looking at the 14 teams involved from Ireland, Wales, Scotland, Italy and South Africa, and the average of each team's points earned per game over the past 5 years, shows the Irish teams all averaging over 2.5 points a game out of a maximum of 5. Scottish sides have had respectable performances, while 3 of 4 Welsh teams and both Italian sides sit in the bottom half. The Cheetahs have performed relatively well, while the Kings' position reflects their off-field troubles. Benetton's improved hugely of late, but the others have not been competitive. Commercially speaking, average attendances are well below top 14 and Premiership levels. Munster, Leinster, Ulster are at that level, while all others average between 8.5 and 3,000 attendances at home. Perhaps another reason why Pro 14 owners are looking at new options to boost revenue. So the new South Africa teams could be the Bulls, Lions, Sharks and Stormers from Super Rugby, the 4 largest and most well-supported unions in South Africa. However, they represent just a small fraction of the country, would play through the cricket season and could play up to 8 away games in Europe rather than 5 outside South Africa during Super Rugby. So not everything's coming up roses. Upsides would be easier time zone adjustment for these 4 teams, possible increased interest and attendance at home games in Ireland, Wales, Scotland, Italy to watch the new teams, and perhaps new investment and sponsorship. However, new issues come into the mix as well. The Currie Cup and Rugby Championship would clash with the start of a Pro 16 season. Extra travel for Welsh, Scottish, Irish and Italian teams with 2 to 3 regular season games in South Africa instead of 1 or 2 they have now, while South Africa sides could travel significantly more than they do in Super Rugby, raising the possibility of more rapid player migration into European teams. Now, there's nothing wrong with players choosing their best career option, though with over 100 South Africa players already contracted in Europe, the added exposure of week-in, week-out rugby against European teams brings the chance that more will follow. Another question is whether South Africa teams would be invited to join the Super Rugby of the Northern Hemisphere, the European Cup or not, and how to manage a possible salary cap in a Pro 16, although it doesn't have one now. And this topic is crucial here, and it clearly demonstrates the gap between North and South. Privately owned French and English clubs are able to spend between 6 million and nearly 10 million euros on their squads, excluding a 200,000 euro credit for each French elite player. So if a team has 5, they can add another million euros onto their cap, while English sides are allowed to play 2 marquee players outside of their cap as well. And this is after the 10 to 25% pay cuts agreed due to the COVID impact. The Pro 14 doesn't have a salary cap, though it's publicly known that Irish sides each spent an average of around 7 million euros last year, while Scottish and Welsh teams spent the equivalent of 4.5 to 5.5 million euros. So after their pay cuts, these teams' average is just below 5 million euros. Contrast that with Super Rugby salary caps, which at the start of 2020 were 5.5 million Aussie dollars, 70 million rand in South Africa, and just over 4.6 million New Zealand dollars a team. However, when you consider the eye-watering pay cuts agreed in Australia, South Africa and New Zealand, then annually those teams' spending abilities might be close to halved for 2021. and with salary levels possibly running at a third to a fifth of Northern Hemisphere clubs, then many more players' choices could be shaping up in a northerly direction. So what to do about Super Rugby? Surely the most revenue generating competition in Southern Hemisphere. With 18 teams having competed in the last 5 years, and looking again at average points earned per game in that time, excluding Sunwolves who averaged below 1, it's clear New Zealand teams have fared the best, while most South African teams occupy mid-table with Jaguares, and most Australian sides are nearer the bottom. This is not the full story though, since travel affects players' preparation and performance, and it's useful to know that New Zealand sides play the fewest regular season games outside their own country, 4, with away tours lasting 2 weeks max, while South African and Australian teams play 5 outside their own country, with tours of up to 4 weeks away from home. Nothing compares to Jaguares though, who played 8 away from Argentina in the last full tournament. Much has been made of declining attendances, and rightly so. The sight of half-empty stadia without the roar of cheering supporters detracts from the spectacle, though the example of Super Rugby Aotearoa this year, averaging over 20,000 crowds per game, is absolute proof that fans want what Super Rugby can offer, if they get it in the shape they like. That is, competitive games, home country rivalries, and family-friendly kickoff times. So what options can SANZAAR look at? Keeping the single country formats or a new Trans-Tasman Pacific comp would enable shorter tournaments with lower cost and less travel. But New Zealand Rugby already announced that Super Rugby on its own was not sustainable financially, so a wider net needs to be cast. For me though, the opportunity to adjust the format and restore Super Rugby by reducing travel and keeping the local rivalries, and putting together a roadmap for engaging with Pacific Islands and bringing back the international element, gives a chance to optimise broadcast, ticket, merchandise revenues versus cost in a full Super Rugby competition. The new format I've come up with mixes the best of what Super Rugby was in 2020 with the inclusivity of the European Cup, keeping more teams involved as deep into the competition as possible. Very simply, the secret sauce is a 3-stage comp of local round robins followed by international qualifiers and knockout finals, designed to draw in and retain fan engagement and maximise broadcaster and sponsor interest. So how do we get there? Well, very quickly, 2021 is basically on us already, and New Zealand Rugby and now Rugby Australia confirmed their comps for the year, which sadly doesn't include the Latui, but that's water under the bridge. For South Africa, a small rejig of the franchise coverage and splitting the Eastern Cape to align with Stormers and Sharks means a strength-first-strength Super Rugby could be run next year, without the Griquas and Pumas, with double round robin and finals for all. New Zealand and Australia will follow theirs up with 5 weekends of additional matches, COVID dependent. For 2022 though, the addition of Moana Pacifica representing Tonga and Samoa is long overdue, based between Manukau, South Auckland, Nuku'alofa and Apia. However, the Kanaloa Hawaii option looks over-optimistic. Since Australia won't take it in 2021, the opportunity remains to get Fiji Latui in for 2022 to build on their foundation in global rapid rugby, and having the Fiji Drua competing in Australia's National Rugby Championship already. There were 60 different players contracted to these 2 Fijian franchises in 2020 and another 29 Fijians based in Europe, easily enough to complete a strong player base to compete in Super Rugby. Then for South Africa, the opportunity for Argentinians to play for the Jaguares will still attract, and I expect given that opportunity the team can be restored after only 1 year away, so that in 2022 all 3 can each run double round robins over 12 weeks. Enabling the new teams to bed in with a higher level of competition, before finally the full return of the most entertaining rugby tournament around. Using the platform of the single country round robins with the inclusion of Argentinian and Pacific flavour, all teams play a 5-match round robin to determine the winner of each country's minor Super Rugby comp. That's 45 matches over 5 weeks. Then, with all sides ranked 1 to 6 in each country, each of the top 3 qualify for a Super Rugby Champions Trophy, where all teams play 6 matches against the other country top 3 teams. So in this scenario here, with teams finishing in their average performance of the last 5 years, Lions would play Brumbies, Waratahs and Hurricanes at home, and travel away to play Rebels, Crusaders and Chiefs. All others get the same schedule. Every team tours out the country for 3 games and gets 3 games at home. In the same way, sides ranked 4 to 6 will also follow the same path in a Super Rugby Challenge playoff, and those 9 teams also get 3 home and 3 away, gaining points on the 2 playoff tables. Following these two playoff series, the semi-finals begin with 2 sets of 4 teams qualifying, followed by the 2 finals for the Championship and the Challenge trophies. So there it is, 105 Super Rugby matches over 14 weeks from mid-Feb to mid-May, bringing, I believe, the best of what fans want, clear emphasis on local rivalries and all teams in with a chance of silverware until the end, what players want, less travel but still to test themselves internationally, and what Sanzar wants and desperately needs, with each of the 3 round robins, the 2 sets of playoffs and both sets of semis and finals able to be sponsored and sold for broadcast independently or negotiated jointly for the best investment. Commercially successful rugby is vital for Southern Hemisphere countries, and despite its historic issues, there is simply no better vehicle than Super Rugby, as smaller comps can never match the power of European rugby. Then, for the icing on the World Rugby cake, finally a World Club Championship, to be held alternately in Northern Hemisphere or Southern Hemisphere, and in a pool stage, pulling in the 4 semi-finalists from the European Champions Cup and the Super Rugby Champions Trophy, seeded 1 to 4 in each group, where the top 2 play each of the bottom 2 from the other hemisphere over 2 weeks. So, in week 1, Super Rugby 1 and 2 play European Cup 3 and 4, and Super Rugby 3 and 4 play European Cup 1 and 2. And in week 2, Super Rugby 1 and 2 play European Cup 4 and 3, and Super Rugby 3 and 4 play European Cup 2 and 1. Then, for the knockout rounds, the top 4 seeds qualify based on points earned in the pool matches, with 4 for a win, 2 for a draw, and a bonus for 4 tries or losing by less than 7. The semi-final draw is 1 plays 3 and 2 plays 4 to ensure the best chance for the top 2 seeds to progress. The losers go into a 3rd place playoff for bronze, and the winners into the final, with teams on most table points earning home games if in the same hemisphere. And matches would be staged at the home of the Super Rugby team, whichever country they are from, in the same way as Super Rugby knockout matches always were. This gives us 12 matches in 4 weeks of Brumbies or Hurricanes or Bulls or Jaguares hosting Leinster or Toulouse or Montpellier or Exeter Chiefs. It'll be spectacular. And now for the calendar. Well, taking the 44 weeks from end of January to end of November, the Rugby Championship would run in its normal window, though, as covered in the global calendar video, would include Japan in a single round robin of 2 home and 2 away over 6 weeks with 1 break in the middle, as well as a second-tier Rugby Challenge for the next 5 non-European sides, currently Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, USA and Uruguay. In July, the Bledisloe series could be copied for a new Springbok Pumas Hugo Porter Naas Botha Trophy too, where the 3rd and deciding match would be in the Rugby Championship. The end-of-season tours would become mid-season tours, outbound to Europe in June, and inbound tours at the end of season in November. And the shorter Super Rugby tournament would finish by mid-May, 2 weeks before the away tours, for ideal player preparation. Domestically, amateur club competitions would run until the end of July, when the professional rugby season begins again, with up to 13 weeks for Currie Cup, Mitre 10 Cup and National Rugby Championship to be completed. Finally, the World Club Championship would run alternately in June in the Northern Hemisphere after their season, and midway through the Southern Hemisphere season to avoid schedule clashes, or vice versa in the South in November after the Southern Hemisphere season. So, there it is. A refurbished Super Rugby, a new World Cup Championship, an improved, more inclusive test schedule, and a better aligned domestic, amateur and professional season. Now, because this video is getting a bit long, I will cover the specifics around the Sanzar Group and Japan's domestic rugby separately, covering New Zealand and Australia, fixing the Currie Cup, improving Top League, developing Argentina's options, as well as a new innovation for professional rugby to develop the game further. And if you haven't already, I invite you to watch the other videos covering the global picture and Europe, North America clubs, plus ideas for each region's Test Championship. Please share your feedback. Thanks for watching. Finally, please note these are all my own ideas and not connected to any official rugby organisation.